Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I still remember the night I saw him. It was past midnight, and I was the only one left at the WWE Performance Center. The place had an eerie emptiness to it at night. The kind where the fluorescent lights hum a little too loudly and every footstep echoes like it doesn't belong to you. I had been training hard, running the ropes, perfecting my bumps. I had dreams, big ones, and I wasn't about to let exhaustion or an empty gym stop me. But when I finally sat down on the apron to catch my breath, I heard it. Ding, a single ring bell. Sharp, hollow. I froze. There was no one else here. No referees, no trainers, no crew. Just me. I turned toward the ring, half expecting to see someone standing there. But it was empty. Just the ropes swaying slightly, as if they'd been disturbed. A chill crawled up my arms. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe it was just the building settling. I stood up, grabbing my water bottle, telling myself it was nothing. Then I saw him, a shadow in the far corner of the ring. Not a person, not really. Just there, no movement, no sound, just a human-shaped blot of darkness, standing just beyond the ropes, watching me. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked. Gone. The ring was empty again. Nothing but the faint creak of the turnbuckles in the silence. My heart pounded against my ribs as I backed away, my brain scrambling to make sense of what I just saw. I grabbed my bag and bolted for the exit, but as I reached the doorway, I heard it, soft, breathy, and right behind me. You took my spot. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the gym, still and silent as a grave. I don't remember how I made it to my car, only that my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my keys. I didn't look in the rear-view mirror the entire drive home. The next morning, I told one of the veteran trainers about what happened. I expected him to laugh, maybe call me a rookie idiot, but instead, his face went pale. Man, you don't know? I shook my head. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Years ago, before the performance center got all fancy, they used to push guys hard in here. There was this one kid, young, hungry just like you. He wanted it more than anything. But his body couldn't keep up. The trainer hesitated, glancing around as if making sure no one else was listening. Then, quieter, he died in this ring. Heart attack. He just dropped, right in the middle of a drill. They tried to save him, but it was too late. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. They say he never left, the trainer continued. Every now and then, people hear weird things late at night. Ring bells when no one's around. Footsteps in empty hallways. Some guys have even seen him, just standing in the ring, like he's still waiting for his shot. I swallowed hard. But the creepiest thing, the trainer lowered his voice. He always says the same thing. I already knew the answer, but I asked anyway. What does he say? The trainer's eyes met mine. You took my spot. I never trained alone at night again. Story 2. The first time I saw him, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. It was one of those small-town house shows, the kind WWE puts on between big TV events. The arena wasn't much, just a few thousand seats, mostly die-hard fans and kids with replica belts slung over their shoulders. The kind of crowd that cheers loud because, for them, this is WrestleMania. I was working security that night, stationed by the barricades near the ramp. Easy job. Just stand there, keep an eye on the fans, make sure no drunk idiot jumps the rail. I'd done it 100 times before, and then I saw him, front row, dead center, a man in a pure white lucha mask. He didn't move, didn't chant, didn't cheer, just sat there, hands on his knees, staring straight ahead. At first, I figured he was just a weird fan. You see all kinds in the crowd. People in full Undertaker get-ups, guys wearing old school masks. But something about him felt off. The mask had no mouth hole, just two empty black circles where the eyes should be. A custom design? Maybe? But why did it feel so wrong? I watched him for a few minutes, waiting for him to react to the match. Nothing. His head didn't turn, not even when the wrestlers brawled outside the ring, just a few feet from him. I swear, even the air around him felt still, like the space he occupied was heavier than the rest of the room. A bad feeling curled in my stomach. I nudged the guy next to me, another security guard. "Hey, you see that guy?" I tilted my head toward the masked man. He glanced at the crowd. "Oh, that guy in the white mask. Front row." He gave me a weird look. "Dude, there's no one there." My chest went cold. I turned back. The seat was empty. I blinked, scanning the crowd, expecting to see him somewhere else. But he was gone. There was no way he could have moved that fast. Not without pushing past other people, making some kind of commotion. But no one around the empty seat seemed to notice anything. I felt sick. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I kept scanning the crowd, but I never saw the masked man again. By the time the show wrapped up and the last fans were trickling out, I was half convinced I'd imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't. Later that night, I asked one of the old-timers, one of those WWE staff guys who had been around forever, if he'd ever seen anything strange at shows. Just a casual question, like I wasn't already on edge. His face changed. "Why?" he asked, his voice suddenly wary. I hesitated. I think I saw something tonight. A guy in a white lucha mask. Front row. Just sitting there. He was gone when I looked back. The old man went pale. You saw him. A cold shiver ran down my spine. "Oh." He let out a slow breath. Every few years, someone spots that guy. No ticket. No record. Just appears. Always front row. Who is he? The old man looked around like he didn't want anyone else to hear. Then he leaned in and said, "They say he was a wrestler. A rookie. Got signed back in the late 80s. Right before a big pay-per-view debut. Kid was going to wrestle his first match that night. But he never made it to the arena. Died in a car crash on the way." My mouth went dry. "Some say he still shows up," the old man continued. "Every few years, just sits there watching, like he's still waiting for his match." I forced out a laugh, but it sounded weak. "That's just a story, right?" The old man didn't smile. "Tell that to everyone who's seen him. I didn't sleep that night. I kept seeing that white mask, those empty black eye holes. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me, that I was tired, that the lights messed with my vision. But the next morning, I checked the event footage. Front row, dead center. The seat was empty all night. I never stood by the barricades again. Story 3. They don't talk about it much. It's one of those things that lives in whispers, half smirks, and quiet warnings muttered between guys who've been around long enough to know better. Don't look into the old mirror alone. That's what one of the trainers told me when I first signed with WWE. I laughed it off. Thought he was just trying to mess with a new guy. Wrestlers love to screw with each other. Ribbing, pranks, you name it. Hazing's mostly dead now, but the mind games, those never stop. So when I found myself alone in the locker room after a match, drenched in sweat and running on pure adrenaline, I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed a towel, wiped my face, and looked up into the mirror. It was old, too old to still be in use, honestly. The frame was this deep, dark wood, carved with patterns that looked like they belonged in some dusty antique store, not a modern sports arena. The glass was a little warped, like heat had gotten to it over the years, making reflections stretch and shift in weird ways. But it was just a mirror. At first, I ran the towel over my face again, rubbing at a sore spot on my jaw where I'd taken a stiff shot in the ring. When I looked up, my reflection didn't move. I froze. I was standing there, my hands down by my sides. But in the mirror, my hands were still holding the towel, still rubbing at my face. I swallowed, throat dry as dust. My gut told me to move, to turn around, to do anything but keep looking. But my body wouldn't listen. My reflection, the thing in the mirror, slowly, almost lazily dropped the towel. Then it tilted its head, studying me, and then it smiled. I swear on my life, I wasn't smiling. It was my face, my same tired, sweat-soaked features. But the way it grinned, it wasn't right. It stretched just a little too wide, lips peeling back to show too many teeth, like it was enjoying something I didn't understand. I took a step back. The reflection didn't. I didn't think, didn't breathe, just bolted. I grabbed my bag and ran out of that locker room like the devil himself was nipping at my heels. Later that night, I told one of the veterans about what happened. He didn't laugh, didn't smirk, just sighed like he'd heard this before. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked. I nodded. He ran a hand over his face, looking suddenly old, like whatever weight he'd been carrying just got heavier. That mirror's been in WWE for decades. Nobody knows where it came from. Some say it was part of an old theater. Others say it was a prop from a horror movie that got left behind. But one thing's for sure. Everyone who's been in this business long enough sees something in it. I swallowed. What does it mean? He shrugged. Some guys think it shows you what you'll become if you stay in the business too long. Others think it's not a mirror at all. He looked at me then, eyes dark and serious. They think it's something watching us. I didn't sleep that night. And the next time I was in the locker room, surrounded by guys laughing and talking, I caught sight of that mirror out of the corner of my eye. For just a second, I swore I saw myself standing there, not moving, just smiling. Story 4. The night was buzzing with the kind of nervous energy you only get before a pay-per-view. Wrestlers pacing back and forth, bouncing on the balls of their feet, shaking out their hands, psyching themselves up. The air smelled like sweat, cheap pyro smoke, and the faint plastic tang of new gear. I was standing in gorilla position, shifting my weight from foot to foot, listening to the distant roar of the crowd. That deep, rolling thunder that makes your ribs vibrate. My entrance was coming up soon. That's when I saw him. A guy I didn't recognize, sitting on one of the black production crates near the curtain, lacing his boots. He had his head down, focused, pulling the strings tight, double knotting them with practiced precision. He was dressed in full gear, black tights with red trim, knee pads. Boots shined up like he was about to step under the bright lights. He had that look, the way rookies look right before their first big match. That controlled panic, that barely contained shake in their hands, even as they try to act like they've done this 1,000 times before. I figured he was a new guy, maybe from NXT or the Performance Center, getting a dark match before the main show. It wasn't unusual. WWE brings in new talent all the time, cycles them through. I walked past him, rolling my shoulders, trying to stay loose. "Hey man," I said, nodding toward him. "What match are you in?" The guy didn't look up, just kept lacing his boots. "Tighter, tighter." I stopped, frowning. Maybe he didn't hear me over the noise, so I tried again. "You up next?" Nothing. No reaction. He just kept lacing. Something about the way his fingers moved, quick, mechanical, made the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. There was something off about him, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I took a step closer. He smelled like old leather, like gear that had been sitting in a duffel bag for too long. "Hey man, you okay?" This time he paused. His hands froze over his laces. Then, slowly, he lifted his head. His eyes. God, his eyes. They weren't right. They were too dark, like the pupils had swallowed everything. No reflection. No shine. Just two black pits in his face. I took a step back, my pulse kicking up a notch. And then, he was gone. No sound. No movement. Just gone, like I had blinked and he had never been there. I stood there, my breath caught in my throat, staring at the empty crate. My skin was cold, even though I was sweating. A stagehand walked by, one of the guys in a headset coordinating the entrances. I grabbed his arm. "Hey," I said, my voice lower than I intended. "Did you see that guy sitting here?" The stagehand looked at me, confused. "What guy?" I turned back toward the crate, half expecting the guy to be there again. Maybe I had just imagined it. Maybe the pre-match adrenaline was messing with me. But no, there was something there. Not a person. A pair of boots. Black with red trim, just like the guy had been wearing. Sitting neatly by the crate, laces undone. The stagehand saw them too. His face went pale. "You saw him," he whispered. It wasn't a question. I swallowed, my throat dry. "Who the hell was that?" He took a step back, shaking his head. "Don't ask. Just don't ask." But I did. I asked around. I found one of the older guys, one of the lifers who had been with WWE for years. I pulled him aside after the show, told him what I saw. The second I mentioned the boots, his face went still. "That's impossible," he muttered. I pressed him. "Who was he?" He let out a slow breath. "Years ago, there was this guy, a prospect, supposed to debut on live TV. Big deal, huge push plan. But the night before his debut, he died in a car wreck on the way to the arena. Never even got to walk through the curtain. A chill slithered down my spine. They say he still shows up sometimes," the old-timer continued. "Right before the show, sitting by the entrance, lacing up his boots, like he's still getting ready." I thought of the way the guy had sat there, looping his laces over and over. never looking up, never speaking. They say, the old timer went on. He's still waiting for his music to hit. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those hands moving, lacing up boots that would never step into the ring. And sometimes, I wonder if he ever made it. Maybe one night he finally heard his entrance cue. Maybe somewhere in the dead space between reality and whatever comes next, he finally walked through the curtain. Story 5. I've seen a lot of strange things in my years working WWE events. Fans sneaking backstage, wrestlers losing their minds after a bad match, entire arenas going dark at just the wrong moment. But nothing, not a single damn thing, prepared me for what I saw that night after the show in Cincinnati. We'd wrapped up a live event, the kind of small market show that doesn't make TV but still draws a solid crowd. The last match had been a brutal one. Two guys stiffing each other so hard you could hear the slaps echo all the way up to the cheap seats. Blood on the mat. That sick thud of flesh hitting plywood. The kind that makes even the toughest guys wince. When the show ended and the fans filed out, the crew got to work. The ring doesn't stay up, you see. Most people don't realize that. The squared circle, the sacred battleground of wrestling, is a temporary thing. We build it up, we tear it down, and we move on to the next city. I was on my knees, yanking at the thick canvas, rolling it up with two other guys when I felt it. A vibration, not much, just enough to make the hairs on my arms stand up. Then I saw the ropes. They were moving, not a little either, not like the soft sway they get when someone brushes past them. No, they were bouncing, shaking, the way they do when a wrestler is running full speed, hitting them like a slingshot before launching into the center of the ring. I shot a look at my buddy Jake. He was standing near the apron, wiping sweat from his face with the hem of his shirt. "You see that?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just stared, like he was trying to convince himself it wasn't real. "Yeah," he finally muttered. "I see it." No one was in the ring. No one was even close. The other guys must have noticed too, because one by one, they stopped what they were doing. No more idle chit-chat. No more clanking tools. Just silence, except for the rhythmic bounce of those ropes. Then came the sound, a thud, not loud, but unmistakable. The sound of a body hitting the mat. I swear to God, my heart nearly stopped. Jake took a step back. "No way," he whispered. The rest of the crew froze, every single one of us looking at that ring like it was about to come to life. And then, just like that, it stopped. The rope still. The air in the building seemed to shift, like something had passed through. That was when I noticed the old guy, standing just outside the gorilla position. He was a road agent, one of the guys who'd been with the company for decades. White hair, thick glasses, face carved from time and experience. He was just watching us, arms crossed like none of this surprised him. I forced a laugh, but it sounded wrong coming out of my mouth. "Did you see that?" I asked. He nodded, slowly. "That happens sometimes." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" The old man exhaled through his nose, took a step closer. "Some of the greats who passed," he said, voice low. "I think they still run the ropes." The way he said it calm, certain, like it was a fact, like it was something he'd seen before. A shiver ran up my spine. I wanted to tell myself it was just a trick of the eyes, just our minds playing games with us after a long, exhausting night. But then I thought about the sound, that thud, the unmistakable weight of a body slamming against the mat, and the way the air felt heavy, charged, like we weren't alone. I didn't say anything else. None of us did. We finished the teardown in record time, packed up, and got the hell out of that arena. The next morning, I did something stupid. I looked up the history of that building. A long time ago, back in the 80s, a wrestler died there. Heart attack in the ring. He collapsed in front of a sold-out crowd, never got back up. The weird part? He was a rope runner. One of those high-energy guys who bounced off the ropes like a bullet before every big move. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I'll tell you this. Since that night, I've worked dozens of shows in dozens of arenas, and I have never, ever stepped inside an empty ring again.